We're back with our Fatima edition, our special edition of Fatima TV Worldwide, with Michal Semin from Prague. He was talking about life under communism. He was born in 1967, correct? 67, yes. And lived under communism up into the so-called fall of communism in 1988. And we're going to be talking about, did communism really fall, or has it just assumed another character, another way of presenting itself? But first, we have a question from the audience, and we would like to take your question.
Okay, Michal, nice to meet you. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how the fall of communism came about. It sounds like it's not maybe a definite thing, but how did it come about? It seems like there was a point or a trigger of some sort. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, it's there will be different stories for each and every former communist country. I would say that the event that really triggered the changes on a global scheme, that would be the fall of Berlin Wall. And maybe, I mean, in the years before that would be the entrance of Gorbachev, who would, I think, follow the line of the so-called theory of convergence between West and the communist world, trying to align themselves and find their common interests. So that the late 80s was a time when some of the persecutions eased and there was more free debate about various matters, not necessarily with the intention of killing the thing or overthrowing the regime. It's possible that some of the events happen spontaneously without anyone behind, moving with the people like, on a chessboard. But today I would say that the main scheme of events was to a certain degree pre-planned. I mean, the end of Cold War was something that was premeditated. And they were planning for a certain situation when they would have to stop the opposition of these two blocks, mainly for economic financial reasons. And also because, at least on the part of the communist countries, they didn't have any support on the part of the people who would be willing, for example, in case of a real bloody collision, to fight for the communist regime. I mean, that was...
Nobody would do it.
Nobody would do it. I mean, they would do it out of, I'm looking for the English. Yeah. They would have to because otherwise they would be beheaded or something like that. But not out of love of, not
for the Politburo.
Not for the Politburo. That's correct. Yes. So there were demonstrations that I'm sure were spontaneous. Yeah. I mean, we all were looking forward to
a way out.
To a way out. Yes. Yeah. And to the end of this particular regime. But I would not say it was the fall of communism or something like that. It just was a end of a certain manifestation of communism or the revolution that's associated with communism.
So it sounds like when the Berlin Wall fell, each communist country in its own sort of sat back and sort of tried to feel things out and figure out, okay, where do we stand in all of this and what do we do? And I guess in each their own way, they sort of adapted to the new situation.
Yes, correct. And the general population and the communist apparatus as well. I mean, because most of them, especially the younger, they knew it's going to end. And they were trying, in a strictly pragmatic manner just to find the way out. So because obviously there was a fear among them that people would go against them and might hang someone or something like that, so they were trying to
Yeah, the retribution.
like in Bucharest, in Romania, the beheading of Ceausescu and so forth, and that was a real spontaneous event. So yes, they were afraid of something like that, so they were trying to do it as smoothly as they could.
They've had many years of programming, so I imagine you don't just deprogram that in a day.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, before we go into what we're saying, communism has become, I think it might be good to back up to the subsistent exemplar of communism, Karl Marx himself. I think if we understand Marx, and because we talked a little bit about it before, that was he really an atheist, or
right?
What do we know of Marx?
That's a very important, interesting question, because if we know true Karl Marx, then we will better understand also the nature of communism and why it really didn't fall in the way that generally it's presented to the public. Because Karl Marx, in a sense, is not as original as many people would think. He didn't come up with his own ideas about social restructuring, political ideology or something like that.
Well,
that was...
The popes were condemning communism even before Das Kapital, right? I mean, or at least socialism, right?
Well, I mean, the first social encyclical is Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, in 1891, which, I mean, there were...
Pius IX was after the principles prior to that.
He would be against the principles. They would not call it communism yet at that time. There was this commune in France, but communism as such didn't exist yet as an international movement. The first encyclical that's really devoted specifically to communism as such, as a movement and ideology, is Pius XI.
Right.
In 1937, or
I think it's about then, yes.
Yeah, Redemptor Hominis, and no. It's maybe a different title. It's John Paul II, right?
I've gone a blank too.
Yeah, anyway. I have it somewhere. Divini Redemptoris.
That's
right, Divini Redemptoris.
But anyway, Marx.
And,
yes.
Okay, but Marx. Marx is an interesting person. He was born in 1818 into a German, well, in fact, it was a Jewish family of a Lutheran faith, Lutheran religion. His parents were both Lutheran. He was a kind of a pious, from the Lutheran perspective, environment. He grew up, he was imbued with the Lutheran theology, and he wrote some interesting prose and poems in his early age that reflect his Christian upbringing or Lutheran upbringing. Something serious happened, though, when he was about 19 or 20 years old, when he was studying at the university. There are proofs now that he got involved with a group of Satanists there. But no one really knows what changed his mind. I mean, there is a debate among historians, but no one really comes with a conclusive answer. What was the real event or the moment that he changed so completely, to the opposite side? Because he continued writing poems, but expressing a real satanic worldview.
Yes. Yeah.
And
he wrote a poem to Satan. Didn't he? I mean.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I can read a little bit of it.
Sure.
I have it somewhere, just to have the sense of what he was thinking about. What penetrated his mind and what was in his heart. In one poem, for example, I wish to avenge myself against the one who rules above. Okay, so he was convinced that there is one above.
That's not
atheism.
Yes,
okay, atheism is a denial of God.
Yeah.
Someone who, is trying to prove that God doesn't exist. But this is not atheism. No. He knew that God exists. He was raised as a Christian. So, but in this period of his life, he decided to wage a war against God and the created order. In his poem, Invocation of One in Despair, we read, "So a God has snatched from me my all, in the curse and wreck of destiny. All his worlds are gone beyond recall, nothing but revenge is left to me. I shall build my throne high overhead, cold, tremendous shall its summit be, for its bulwark superstitious dread, for its marshal blackest agony."
Well, that's a non-serviam.
That's a non-serviam. Yeah. And that's important for understanding the nature of communism. That it's just the late, the 19th, 20th century manifestation of this original non-serviam of Lucifer.
And also he's clearly imbuing the humanist philosophies that were alive at the time. He's pulling all that together.
Yes.
And because Satanism is humanism.
Yes.
There's nothing higher than man. Man becomes God, the deification of man.
Precisely. The deification of man. That was his big theme.
Yes. And he's not going to have competition.
Precisely. Yeah. Dethroning God, putting man and nature as the total being, instead of him. So this is much more than just abolition of private property or nationalization of schools
or an economic system.
Or economic system.
Yes.
This is he had a much higher ambition, and he himself was not really interested in economics at all. It was Engels whom he befriended, who was more interested in economic matters.
And supported Marx. Anyway.
And supported, because he came from a bourgeois family. Yes. He was a factory owner, right, Engels. So, whenever and Marx was all the time he was in debt.
He was a freeloader.
That's right, drunken and all the time. His private life. This is an interesting feature of many intellectuals in the modern era, that they want to fix the world, they want to change the world, they even love humanity, they love these abstract, but their personal, private lives, that's complete.
It's a shambles.
It's in shambles, in complete destruction. His two daughters committed suicide.
Marx's two
daughters. His wife attempted 3 times to commit suicide.
Well, Marx was quite heartless too. I remember reading a book about Marx, and Engels' wife had died. And Marx sent Engels a note saying, "I'm very sorry to hear about your wife. Could you send me 20 pounds?
Yes.
That was the letter.
That was
the letter.
Yes, precisely.
So this better explains the system that he came up with was not just an economic system, not just a commitment to a more fair distribution of wealth or anything.
Precisely.
It was an attack against God, and as an attack against God, it has to be an attack against humanity, against man himself.
Yes, and the whole creation, the whole order of creation. That's why, and this is quite interesting, because in this circle of the Satanists, there were other people that were interested in the old mysterious teachings of Kabbalah and alchemy and things like that. And if you just deal with matters like alchemy, it's all about a recreation or creation in a different way than how God created the world. Yes. So it's this constant attempt.
Well, it's sheer human volition over everything, even the created order that can't be changed.
Precisely.
Yes, we have a question from the audience.
Just a little addition to what you said.
Yes.
I think I have also read another of Marx's poems where he says that after death he will hurl curses back on earth. Are you familiar with something like that? And that's part of it. But then the other thing is whether his active hatred of God and his creation continued with his successors.
Yes, okay. I am not aware if what particular poem this was. I think this comes from his play, because he was also, he wrote a play called Ulem, which is a name which doesn't mean anything. I mean, just kind of a nickname for a demon or something like that, or for the force that is to lead him in the battle against God and His creation. And the second part of your question, I am not aware of the fact that his followers would be intentionally or involved in satanic or similar practices. Among them you would find genuine atheists, but a certain type of atheists, not just denying God, but hating religion, hating everything that has to do...
Well, hating any theistic order.
Yes, that's right. Anything transcendental. Anything that, that doesn't come from human mind and will.
And certainly the gulags in Russia, the way the Catholics were persecuted. But you say that was less in your country, right?
A little bit less, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Scary.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, it's... but we find this, in other countries under different manifestations. I'm just preparing myself for a talk I will give soon in my country about Cristeros, about the Mexican rebellion of the Catholic peasants against a Freemasonic government that behaved, in a sense, maybe even worse than the communists in Czechoslovakia.
Yes.
But they were motivated by the same mindset. Mm-hmm. They had the same end in mind. The destruction of religion, destruction of the nation, of the people, of the true liberties, so we see that communism is really just one phase of a long tradition of revolution with capital R. Something I think I have it here. If I may read it, Monsignor Gaume. A famous priest, a French critic of French Revolution. He once tried to explain an audience the meaning of French Revolution. What was behind the French Revolution? And I just quote short part of it. If snatching away the mask of the revolution you asked her, "Who are you?" she would say to you, "I am not what they believe I am. Many speak of me and very few know me. I am not carbonarism conspiring in secret, not riots roaring in the streets, nor the change from the monarchy to a republic, nor the substitution of one royal dynasty for another, nor a temporary disturbance in public order." To add what John said, not economic system or something like that. "These things are my works, but they are not me. These men and these things are transitory things, and I am a permanent condition. I am the hatred of every religious and social order which man has not established and in which he is not king and God together. I am the proclamation of the rights of man against the rights of God. I am the philosophy of rebellion, the politics of rebellion, the religion of rebellion. I am armed nihilism. I am the founding of the religious and social state on the will of man in place of the will of God. In a word, I am anarchy, for I am God dethroned and man put in his place."
Yeah, it's kind of the revolution in flesh speaking.
Precisely. Yes. Precisely. That's why communists, I remember from being a pupil in the school, French Revolution was always presented to us as the model, as something positive that the communists really followed upon. Yes.
To get back to Czechoslovakia, could you comment on the role of President Havel and Cardinal Tomáš?
Tomášek?
Tomáš.
Cardinal Tomášek was the Archbishop of Prague and cardinal who died in the early 90s. So he lived through the transition period. To understand his situation, he was not involved with the underground church activities, although he had contacts with some of the people there. That would be a completely, a separate story, because the underground Catholic or the underground church was not a unified force. You would find very progressive theologians and priests involved in the underground movement. That would be, in many ways, even worse than the approved clergy that was that became members. The government erected a special organization for them called Pacem in Terris, and these members were real collaborators with the communist regime.
Did he collaborate with them?
He didn't. He didn't. He, in fact, he excommunicated the priests that became members of Pacem in Terris. He was trying to balance all kinds of positions. At the end of 1980s, though, he was very popular, and he played a positive role in the whole population. That's for sure. Havel. Václav Havel was the leading voice of the anti-communist opposition, but not from a Catholic or Christian position, but from a humanistic Freemasonic perspective. He would be, we didn't deal yet with that topic, but he would belong to the camp of those who understood that communism, or the revolution with the capital R, manifested in the Soviet type of communism, has no future. Has no future. And but some of the ideas are good and should be promoted through different means, mainly on the cultural level. That is the famous Gramsci's taking over the institutions. So Havel became the darling of the cultural left, of the neo-Marxist left, of the multiculturalism type of mentality. He became very much aligned with the forces that attacked the traditional family and marriage. So he was in favor of the same-sex union and this whole homosexual movement. He became a promoter of or supporter of the environmentalists, the Green Movement. He was the member of the Club of Rome and other organizations that are working in the field of population control. And unfortunately, this is not the picture that's known about Havel. I mean, Havel is never presented this way in the Western media, obviously because he's their man, in the sense that he's on the cultural front of this neo-Marxism that's, in my opinion, neo-Marxism, or this cultural Marxism, that's the real winner of the Cold War.
Well, we only have 5 minutes left, so I really want to nail down this one point. And that is that we had talked about the fact that what we have now in the West is cultural Marxism. You touched on what that is, but let's explain it a little more.
Right.
As far as the anti-life, the breakdown of marriage, new definitions of marriage, all of these are actually non-Serviam.
Yes, precisely.
The entire cultural West right now, with
Yeah.
its abortion, with its contraception, with its promotion of same-sex marriage, everything that God, or so much of what God commands that's part of his will and part of his nature for us, is under attack. So you want to comment on that?
Yes, precisely. Communists attempted also, to destroy family life, marriage. The first years of the Bolshevik revolution in Russia was very libertine. Not just the legalization of abortion in 1920, but legalization of divorce, the first attempt to legalize homosexuality and so forth. This happened in communist Russia. But it didn't succeed because the society was not prepared yet for such a dramatic, fundamental change.
The individual people rebelled against it.
Yes,
it was
they
too
would.
much.
Yeah, that was too much.
Yes.
That was too much.
Well, they had more sense.
In a sense, the communism as a mentality was divided. In the East, it was mostly concerned with economics and not that it would avoid other areas of life. It tried to penetrate all the institutions. But the cultural Marxism was more successful in the West, which we didn't know. In the time of the Iron Curtain, we look at the West as the example, of sanity and a good life and so forth. We didn't know how these destructive forces, how well organized are they? So when with the fall of communism, our country was almost instantaneously, or in just a couple of weeks and months, full of pornography, which was forbidden. I mean, the communists.
Yes, no, you can't have a good society with pornography.
Right. And contraception, which was not. I mean, the pill was almost. Well, mainly because there was shortages of everything.
Yes.
So there was only a little access to some, types of contraception. So now the contraception was everywhere available. The television, the whole kind of, the pop culture and all of that. Well, it came from the West.
Yeah, and this cultural Marxism that we talk about still has those two elements, which are the revolt against God.
Yeah.
And also human volition is supreme. Whatever I want to do, I have a right to do,
Precisely.
and not even God in his heaven
Yes.
can tell me otherwise.
Yes. There are
So-
more abortions than were under communism. If you combine it, with the artificial birth control, which is abortifacient, like the pills and so forth, we have more divorce than we had. The family life is more destroyed than it was under communism.
So we're here in Rome with this Fatima conference because only our Blessed Mother really has the answer, which is the fulfillment of her message, living it ourselves, the daily rosary, the 5 first Saturdays. And also a very strong work of this apostolate is to consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, because then we will have a true conversion.
Precisely.
And the triumph of the Immaculate Heart and a period of peace granted to the world.
Over both communism and liberalism, which are in many ways twins of the same revolution.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you too, John. Thank you.